everyone. Good evening. If you could grab a spot at one of the tables, we're going to get started. So, welcome to V2, Institute for the Unstable Media, and welcome to Blowup, the era of objects. And tonight, we have three expert guests with us that are going to guide us through what we mean by this title, the era of objects. But first, I'll explain what Blowup is. Blowup is a kind of platform for provocation. Every time we do Blowup, it's a bit different. Sometimes there's talks like this. I'm sort of now leaning towards this talk show format that I quite like. Hope you like our new stage setup. And we also sometimes bring in artworks, exhibitions, demos, different things. We try to mix it up and keep things flowing and keep you on your toes. So that's Blowup. And we also, every time we do a Blowup, we release an ebook. And tonight, of course, is no exception. In fact, I think tonight's ebook is fantastic. It's got some incredible contributors alongside our speakers tonight, but it's also got Rob van Kranenburg and Bruce Sterling and Ilona Gaynor. So please check it out. It's online right now, the PDF version. The other versions will be coming soon. So keep your eye out on the V2 website for those ebooks, which are totally free to download and share. So tonight, we're going to talk about the era of objects, and this, in the blurb that you probably read to either attend this event or watch on the stream, you got a sense that we're trying tonight to go beyond the cliche of the flying car when we talk about things like what kinds of future objects we might be using to either survive disaster scenarios or just get by in the near or not so near future. What kind of things do we have around us? We do have so much stuff, and our stuff tends to define us as human beings. Just ask anyone who's moved recently. That would be me. But we also definitely have to take into consideration what the future of that might look like, and that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to go through what speculative design means, what is design fiction, a little dash of the Internet of Things, and there you go. That's where we're going to be going. So I'll tell you a bit about the structure of the evening. First, we're going to have this kind of talk show, and we're going to start with Julian Bleecker, seated on the extreme right of the stage, left, sorry, who is the founder of the Near Future Laboratory and a designer at Nokia. He'll give a very short talk, and then followed by Alexandra Deschamps-Sonsino, who's seated right next to me, who is a partner at Really Interesting Group in London. And then last but definitely not least, Anab Jain, the founder of Superflux, which has offices in the UK and in India. So following their talks, we're then going to go into our talk show format, where we're going to discuss some of the issues that came up in their presentations. Then we're going to have a quick break for you to get a drink at the bar. We have a special cocktail tonight called the What If This Was a Cocktail? You can guess what's in it. There's no prizes for whoever guesses what's in it, but enjoy it anyway. Following the break, we're going to have a very special open think tank. So you get to get up close and personal with these wonderful leaders in the field, and we're going to run you through some interesting scenarios about the objects of the future. So hope you're looking forward to that. This is why we have also a new seating style, so we'll be working in small groups together. At the very end of the evening, we're going to share some of the results of that open think tank. I just want to tell one little anecdote before we get into the presentations, which is, I don't know if anyone saw this in the news recently, but for me, this really summarized something really important about the subject of speculative design, and that was Apple tried to block Samsung from selling their tablet devices in Europe. They didn't succeed in the Netherlands. Go Netherlands. Because they felt that they had ripped off the design of the iPad. So now it's this massive patent battle. And Samsung's response to Apple's accusation of intellectual property theft was to show some screen grabs from the film 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was made in 1968, in which the astronauts are using devices that look strikingly like the iPad. So you know, just to go, whose idea then is that? Should the set designer from 2001 come back and say to Apple, hey, guys, you stole my idea, now you're making millions. So it's again, I thought this anecdote really touched upon a lot of the issues that we might face tonight in terms of how are we dreaming the future, will it come true, when it does, are we going to welcome it with open arms or not? And on that note, I'd now like to hand it over to Julian.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, so what I want to share with you is some perspectives on the future and how to think about the future, and some of the things that I've learned about how one can use sort of speculation, or in some sense like fiction, to think about new things. And I think that's quite important as a designer and as designers in the room, to just have a way of essentially shifting your point of view and looking at things a little bit differently. So this is a quote you will know from William Gibson. He says, "As I've said many times before, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed." I find this quite interesting because it gives a sort of perspective of the future as something that's more of a landscape, something that spreads around. And then this was something that was, actually there was one that didn't show up. Okay, it was the first slide. Fiction is evolutionary valuable because it allows low-cost experimentation compared to trying things for real. And I find this, this is just sort of an anecdotal expression by someone on Twitter to say that we can use fiction to help us imagine about things. And if you think about fiction as a genre, especially science fiction, as a genre that's able to, basically it's designed to speculate. So along with those, there were supposed to be 3, but now there are 2 perspectives on, or statements about the future. Here's like a graph, and I like these kinds of graphs because they're ways essentially of visualizing what the future is and where it is and where it comes from. In this case, this is just that, oh, the future is something that happens after now and it will be better. And so this sort of very linear graph of time moving forward and some measure, I'm not sure what it is, that's a question mark, but things will be better. It'll be smaller, it'll be faster, the battery will last longer, or we'll get more energy from it. Here's another representation of the future, which is sort of very kind of linear flow model. This isn't, as designers, or anyone who's in an activity where they're trying to produce some kind of change, will think of like, well, I have an idea, I'll give it a try, I'll call that a prototype, and then at the end of that, I will materialize that idea in some kind of form. So it's an idea, you sort of, maybe you write some software, the software then represents that idea as a bit of machine instruction. You can think of the same thing, doesn't always have to be a technical thing, of course. Here's another graph of the future where there's this almost logarithmic increase in betterment, whatever it might be, and this is often something that's, sort of vaguely around like Moore's law, like things are going to get better, but they're going to get better incredibly quickly, and they're going to get smaller by orders of magnitude every year, or these kinds of things. So we're all familiar with these sort of perspectives of the future, this being probably one of the ones that Silicon Valley holds quite dear. So this is another graph of the future. This is the Gartner hype curve. And this is a very interesting graph because it goes in all kinds of different directions. Essentially, like an idea becomes quite exciting, and you sort of reach this level of hype that is that first bump there, and things that have moved, you can think of all the technologies that maybe have followed this, like virtual reality, or RFID. It's going to take over the world and it'll change everything. Inevitably, there's a trough of disillusionment where people are like, oh, well, that didn't work out. And then it's sort of things sort of level out. This is kind of my really bad hand-drawn sketch of what I imagine to be William Gibson's sort of graph, that there's some sort of locus. So the future is someplace. Typically, people think of it as in Silicon Valley, and it just sort of spreads from there somehow because the rich and mighty allow us to buy the products that are the materializations of their ideas of what would make the world bigger. These are all just sort of representations of what the future might look like, and I sort of present these to you because it's just to make the point that the future can be very different. It can be represented in very different ways. It doesn't necessarily fit just a linear model or a logarithmic model or a wavy, bumpy model, that there are a lot of ways of imagining the future, this being another one where it's just there are a lot of different technologies going on, and we're trying to get them to fit into the future at some point. So there are all these struggles and contestations over whose idea, whose concept of the future might win. I guess sort of the Samsung-Apple debate being one instance of that. So there's always this sort of territories being fought over the future as an area, as a terrain that a lot of people want to get into and have a stake in. in. This is probably maybe right now my favorite graph of the future, where it's actually much more about a relationship between the entertainment industry and the high technology industry. In this case, essentially, a film cites an existing technology, and that sort of develops this feedback loop where technology companies like an idea they see in a film, and they go about trying to develop it and create it. And then there's actually these very interesting feedback loops where consultants on the film actually participate in evolving and developing the technology. And so this is sort of gets to the main point of the relationship between design and science fiction. These three principles for speculating with design and fiction, the first one being that science fiction and science fact, effectively, they're all knotted up anyway. There are no hard, fast boundaries between the world of, in this case, science fiction and the real world. And we sort of know this. At this point, we've all studied our postmodernism. There are these kind of very tight interminglings between the world of fiction and the world of fact. I guess the sort of Apple-Samsung debate being one in particular. The second point to make is that science stories matter more than features, specs, and engineering. This is something that I've come to believe sort of reluctantly myself. I'm trained as an engineer, and I like to think of engineers just come up with really great hacks for things and make them work, when in fact I think that it's actually the ability to communicate and describe that story almost matters more than the specification list, the functional list, and the parts. It's being able to tie those things together. And so Arthur C. Clarke, working with Kubrick to create 2001, effectively brought all these ideas and these technologies together. The third principle around this is that science fiction can do things science fact cannot. And that was related to the Twitter message, which effectively said that we can do things with fiction a lot easier than we can with real science. So you can think through ideas and the stories and the scenarios around them in a very effective way. And this is one of my favorite examples of that, this Starfleet technical manual. Any Star Trek fans out there, if you're a super fan like mine, you would have had this technical manual, which essentially does things like this, just shows impossible technologies, but done in the idiom of the sort of engineering specification. So you want to believe it. You're led to believe it because it looks so much like real engineering. It looks like science fact, like, oh, you see this, and you're like, right, I could build one of those. I mean, they're all the parts. It's all laid out. And so that kind of relationship of trying to draw people in, you're being drawn into the story. You're not being drawn into the technical minutia of this engineering object. You know this because you've lived through the stories of Star Trek. You've lived through the movies. You understand how they operate. So I'm very interested in these different ways of forcing that intermingling between science fact and science fiction. This being another example of using pastiche. So I don't know how many of you have had cars and had to repair them, but in the United States at least, this Haynes manual is the sort of thing you use to fix your old beat-up VW. In this case, they're saying this is what you use to fix your Apollo 11 lunar lander. And so they're just playing with that idea of crossing between the style boundaries of a do-it-yourself thing collapsed together with space travel, which I think is quite interesting. Another approach to doing these things is sort of reenactment and reimagining. So this is a still from an exhibition at a gallery in Los Angeles where effectively they recreated the entire lunar landing, the takeoff, everything, to doing it in a way and then replaying with that idea of what we understand and know about the Apollo mission to completely rewrite the story in a very interesting way. So it's actually a lesbian love romance. There are aliens on the moon, and they just do these little subtle shifts. Otherwise, everything stands as it is. So that's a scale model of the lunar lander, which is fascinating. And then another way to look at the ways that you can intermingle fact and fiction, which is related to pastiche in a way, is to redo existing films. So this is a project that I've been working on. I'm remaking Stanley Kubrick's 2001. And this is just a scene from that remake where I'm playing with the idea of Hal not being a computer, but actually being this other crew member who is actually a service maintenance worker on the ship, who's someone that they're actually thinking about getting rid of and firing. And so that relationship between what artificial intelligence is and what humanity is something that you can begin to work through stories like this. And so why do we want to do this? Why do we want to speculate with design? We want to do it because we need new perspectives. We want new points of view on existing problems. And I think that in some cases it just requires just shifting your perspective. So Dick Fosbury, when he invented the Fosbury flop, for those of you who are into sort of athletic history, he essentially changed the game by just looking at what this thing was and deciding he wanted to jump over it backwards rather than doing the scissor kick jump that a lot of people were doing prior to that, or putting wheels on luggage, which is something I'm quite fascinated with, the fact that there was this time when luggage didn't have wheels and people used to schlep this stuff around actually carrying it, and now it seems absurd. So anytime I see someone with luggage without wheels, I'm absolutely fascinated make them stop and take a picture of it, just to kind of capture that thing that someone said, you know what, I'm just going to put a couple wheels on that, and they just change everything. And so finding those ways to have that different point of view, and I guess a little bit of that gumption to go ahead and make that change, and come what may, this will make the world a little bit better. Those, I think, are really fascinating things to think about. And that's me. I'm Julian Bleecker. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Julian. We'll talk more maybe about your film project, which is very fascinating to me, in our talk show segment. But next up, we have Alexandra.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm Alex. I'm a designer and interaction designer, product designer. And that's not the right one, but that's okay. Wrong version. I guess I'm going to talk about things that interest me at the moment, which are everything to do with spying. I think we're kind of drifting into this retro-futurism that we quite like. We'll look to the past to inform ourselves about the future. And what I'm really interested in is kind of near past and near future. Because as a product designer, the internet is fascinating to me, and I've been working on the internet for a while, but the internet is super physical. It's an infrastructure somewhere. It's server space somewhere. And it's kind of a fallacy that we want to live in a materialist world, in a world that doesn't have stuff, where we don't have stuff. We just have storage. And we don't have devices anymore. This is a really beautiful visualization that kind of shows like how much the screen is kind of getting bigger and the object is getting less. Like there's less to design and there's less to fiddle around as a user, because everything now becomes the glass and the sheet and the sheen. Even if it's super difficult to make those devices, I think what we're creating is platforms. And platforms have been around for a while. This is the BBC Micro. This is Big Track, which was a toy for kids that you could program. And those are from like 1979 and 1981. So this is not new. Our favorite platform, if you're a geek, is the Arduino, which kind of is now ubiquitous, and they've sold 110,000 units. So if you're an artist or a hacker or a DIY person, you kind of know what this is. If you don't, I'm sorry, Google it. And I think that those are really fascinating things, because now people are looking to everyday objects and seeing if you can turn those into platforms. So this is called Sugru, which is this kind of silicon that's been invented by a fantastic Irish woman in the UK, and it kind of fixes everything. You kind of mold it around your objects every day, and in 24 hours it's cured. So it kind of holds whatever it is together, and cables and things like that. But I'm less interested in kind of platforms per se as like the quirky things that happen when you do quirky industrial design. This is quirky, but not for the reasons that you think it is. If you give one laptop per child to anyone, it will take them at least 20 seconds to figure out how to open one, because the clasp is kind of not really the one you'd expect. This is a tiny pocket that everybody has on their jeans, and someone told me the other day that this is a pocket where you used to put gold when you found gold in the gold rush, which obviously no one found gold in the gold rush, so it was kind of like, oh no, there's got to be a pocket where you can keep it safe, because it's not in your back pocket where someone could steal it from you. These are buttons that are not buttons. This is a thing I found in my office, and it looks like buttons, and you want to press them, and you press them, but no, they're not buttons at all. And that kind of like initial disappointment will never lead me to put like a sticker on it saying these buttons do not function, because it's a tiny thing, it's just a switch. And then you have like wonderful things that happen here, another Star Trek reference, where these are all objects from Star Trek. And back then, and even now, they look so cool. And they look like a crossover between a vacuum cleaner and a remote control, like just kind of came together somehow. But they didn't have hand vacuum cleaners, so what are we gonna think the iPhone looks like now? Holes in connectors are really fascinating as well. The thing that everybody forgets about the first Walkman is that there was a second connection for a second headphones. So you could have your friend kind of plug in and listen to the music that you were listening to. which they took out the second that they realized that they could make more money by selling more Walkmans. This is a picture that my boyfriend took with this camera, a 70-pound camera, when I had my back turned. He like grabbed the camera and took a series of pictures in our flat. And it was kind of like, wow, he never would have done that if it was my phone or my laptop. It's because it's a crappy camera that, you know, was worth 70 pounds. This is a screen that sits in our office. I'm sorry for all the terrible language here. This is a screen that sits in our office, and it just shows what last FM username is playing what song. And one morning, I found this. And there was this moment where I thought, like, who is this person? Does someone really have a username like that? And it's just the nature of kind of shared things. And shared things are kind of weird, but they also illustrate power. This is from the Cold War, from the Russians. And if you notice, none of the phones have dials, because they would never dial anyone. They would be dialed by other people. And that's like super chic, you know. You could never, like the red button, the red phone doesn't even come near that. And when you design things, they also get creepy quite quickly. I'm really interested in this law. I can't remember the name now, but basically there's a law that says for cameras, you have to have a shutter sound, because it will prevent perverts from taking pictures of women or something without them hearing the shutter sound. And I'm sure that at some point facial recognition will have something around it. Like someone will exploit that in ways that will require legislation. These are fun, and just because of the cord. Like I used to spend hours fiddling around with this cord and talking to my friends on the phone. No one has that anymore. And objects can be ridiculous, and this is a thing that makes square eggs. I don't know who in the 70s thought that this was a thing that you would do, but you can, and it just makes that breakfast a little bit more surreal and a little bit more funky. And finally, I think a lot of the ways in which we express utility in product design are really interesting, and I think if radios only ever had the antenna as a sign for like open and close, and no actual like on and off button, it would still work. You kind of would get it. You would get that it was on or off. No one's done that, but I think they could. So I think we possibly could look at things that happened like, you know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and get inspiration for things that will happen in 5 or 6 years. That would be quite useful. Because, yeah, it's like the suitcase that didn't have any wheels. I kind of grew up with that, and I'm not that old. So I think there's loads of things that can be done, and if you kind of put a little bit more whimsy into things and look at product design in kind of a different perspective, I guess. Thank you.
The square egg image is gonna haunt me. It's gonna stay with me. And I can't believe I haven't seen it before. But anyway, you saw it here first, or at least I saw it here first. So thank you. Now, Anab, please take it away.
Hi, so I'm Anab. Yeah, and I'm from London, but this is home. This is Ahmedabad, the hometown where I come from in India, and that is the ubiquitous cow. It's the holy cow. You can't really move them around, and so completely unfazed by the chaos it's causing in an already chaotic traffic situation. It's going to stand right there, right in the middle of the traffic, causing complete havoc. And it's a sort of a symbol of Indian traffic, completely making sure completely unfazed. So yes, you can drive your motorbike around it. You might get hit by it. I know my sister's friend who was blind to cows. Anyway, some years ago, I did this project called Luca the Wi-Fi dog, and this is a billboard which is advertising Luca. Luca has Wi-Fi, and so it could be your personal hotspot, it could be your secure data storer, it could be broadcasting your podcasts in a mobile fashion around the neighborhood. It was quite an interesting idea of the Internet of Pets thing, where you have this whole layer of ubiquitous connected creatures trying to interface with our lives in new and interesting ways. But the interesting thing would come in the next slide, which would come soon. But yeah, it's currently showing at the Talk to Me exhibition, MoMA. So then, recently I saw this thing called this wireless embedded cows by a Dutch startup called Sparked. And I just thought, Lookup is Sparked. That's MUFI. That's what India needs. You have this mobile internet network node going into towns and villages that have no internet, being this sort of base transmitter, creating this mesh network around bringing internet to rural India. We thought it was, it's a very quick hash, of course, it's not a real thing, but trying to illustrate what we perhaps might try and do in the workshop later on, trying to connect ideas and technologies very quickly, and which is comes to the, perhaps I'm getting carried away by MUFI, but essentially this is an example, a small illustration of what we try to do at our design studio, Superflux, which is that we try and work around a lot of emerging economies, because that's where I come from, and lots of new technologies, but try and use speculative design or design fiction to create scenarios which will be rich, emotionally engaging scenarios, allow people to get into spaces that are otherwise impossible to get into. And sometimes we also call it designing for the imminently probable scenarios which are likely to play up. This is just a little pub sketch of how we work. We are a consultancy and a lab, and through the lab we cook up lots of speculative projects, but try and push them into reality, try and find ways to make them real in the present, in the now. And with clients, we try and do what they ask us to do, but somehow try and find ways to make them think in more speculative ways, make them think and start to see unseen opportunities for products that they might not have thought of before. So it's a sort of, the sweet spot in between these two is a space that we would like to operate more in, but it kind of feeds off each other. And this is a project I want to talk a bit more about. We recently worked with a neuroscientist called Dr. Degenar, and he's using this radical technology called optogenetic retinal prosthesis to inject a virus into a person's dead retinal nerve cells. And you can see that image. What happens is the virus makes the nerve cells light sensitive, so visually impaired people are able to see again. And you wear a headset which shoots photons of light, and that light is translated by these new nerve cells into vision. It's a very, it sounds very science fiction, that how can a virus do this, but essentially they're working on it and making it happen. And while they're still working on it, they're trying to trial how people might feel, people who cannot see might feel. So they're creating these sort of image augmentation concepts, these cartoonized worlds, outlines of the world, to show and trialing them with people, thinking at least people might want to see something. So what would this vision be? What would people start seeing with this new augmented prosthetic vision? And so some of the concepts, quite the ones they worked on a lot, were these ideas of this sort of cartoonized characters and creatures and the world around them. But of course, they were coming from a very data-centric perspective. On the other hand, a lot of people that they did these tests with said, I'd rather be blind than have my world look like this, which was a bit of a shock for them, because they were thinking, they were going from the assumption that isn't it great that we're letting people see, people who could not see, they're going to be able to see something. But it's a very different experience. And so I think that's where we as designers came in, because what we are interested in is to try and design ways in which we start feeling things around technology. Technology helps us to feel things differently, coming from a more human-centric perspective as opposed to a sort of strict data-centric perspective. And so that led us to create this set of devices in this project called Song of the Machine, which would help engage with the scientists and start to show them how you might actually create new augmented prosthetic vision for the visual impaired. What sorts of devices, what would be the operating system for this new interface? And I think speculative design plays a very important role in this stage before a technology becomes a product. And so I think by devices, of course, I mean props and prototypes and films and images and everything that is at your disposal as a designer. So these are some of the devices we created. One is a very simple headset that essentially is meant to communicate the idea of what it would be like. So you have this light going into your eye. It's a little computer, and it will essentially translate the beams of light into vision. But also something they hadn't thought of was the idea of a handheld device with tactile fiduciary markers at the corner, which would allow the visual impaired person to do gestures, and these gestures would be communicated to the headset, which would then talk to the brain. So essentially trying to create an entire system of objects that would allow the person to navigate the world in a new way. And then more importantly, we created a film which would show how this person would move around in the world. What was fascinating was, over the conversations with the scientists, that unlike normally sighted people, these people with this new augmented vision could probably start seeing in electromagnetic spectrums not visible to the normally sighted. So you could start seeing heat patterns in the far infrared, snowy landscapes in the near infrared, even augmented reality without having to raise a device in front of your eyes, perhaps even B vision. And this sort of visualization of this vision was something that they had never considered before. So it was important for us to kind of, and this is just an excerpt from the film where we tried to show how this world would look like. And the important thing is also, again, not to make just beautiful objects and beautiful images, but to start showing how these new realms of information would start changing people's behaviors. So if you're a blind person and you see your kettle which shows hot, which starts showing heat and red, you know it's hot, and you can start pouring tea into it, or you go through traffic, or you start going into a landscape and see the world through the B vision. So essentially the film was emotionally engaging them in many new ways. Quickly moving on to another project, I want to read out an excerpt from a letter. So it says, "Hi, the hurricane season is fast approaching and is still bearing disturbing post-hurricane Ike memories paths in my mind. It had pained me during Hurricane Ike to see people kill each other in lines for gas stations while some stupid teeny booper demanded gas so that she could plug in her hair straightener to the generator." So this was a letter written to a company called Arc Inc., which I will explain in the next slide, but it is a real letter written by someone who's been deeply affected by the hurricane. And she goes on to say, "I have no money and I'm racing the clock to find work in this almost extinct economy. But I have some ideas about non-energy sucking beauty products. I believe Houston is definitely an area where your ideas can be tested." And so she's this really earnest person. She's seen people suffering, and she's come up with her own range of energy products that she believes will change the way people live in a post-apocalypse, sort of post-disaster scenario. Hopefully the next slide will come soon. But I mean, I think the point here is to start looking at how people will, so let me finish. And so I'm very interested in working to develop an art collective in Houston. Can someone contact me about how I could do that? So this was a letter written to an art collective, which was supposed to be this company which designs solutions for a post-crash civilization. It is actually a design fiction project by John Arden from the Royal College of Art way back in 2006. And he created this idea through a completely fictional, what you might call super fiction, where you mirror an organization and try and make it look absolutely real. That in a situation where people are hit by a disaster, they start believing it to be real. You can go onto the Arc Inc. website and they will tell you about the confident investments you can make in uncertain times. There are forums about, and people engaging in these forums about what sorts of investments can you make, how is the stock market going to go up and down, what are the products that will have value, what will be the intrinsic value of products, and so on. A completely not real website, a complete fiction, a design fiction or a speculative design project, whatever you call it. But there is a sense of engagement because there's a sense of connection with something like this that would not have happened a few years ago. And also, along with this sort of website, there were a series of products that you could buy. So you could buy books about post-collapse reading, Pets as Protein, Collapsing Society, From Abstract to Intrinsic. these are sort of these manuals that will help you prepare for the collapse. In case there's a collapse, you just grab these books and run, and you'll be fine. There's even a shortwave radio that you listen to as a normal radio, but in case of emergency, break the glass, and it becomes a shortwave radio that you can start broadcasting locally with people in your vicinity. So a set of products and services, fictional in nature, but around a very important thing. So the problem with this sort of design fiction, the reason I'm talking about it, is the ethical questions it raises. What happens when some of these things start to become real? How can the designer continue to be part of that conversation? So now, for John, it becomes a responsibility to either tell these people, this is not real, I'm really sorry affected by the hurricane, there is no Ark Collective. Or you take your responsibility, you look at the legal implications, you start having a conversation and start building some of these things together. So where does the boundary between design fiction and reality, where is the boundary, and how do designers working in this field tackle with these problems? And so I think some of the things that I've been talking about in the projects, we're trying to kind of put under a broad sort of title called Design Futurescaping, essentially to say devices, whether they're props, products, prototypes, scenarios, films, serve as devices to create the script, the initial script between humans and technology, a script that will eventually become a narrative, eventually become a product or a service, become an experience. But it's very important to start exploring these spaces, because they will help us see what's desirable ahead of time, and hopefully make things that are more desirable, more plausible. So I think that that is quite an important thing for designers to think about as well. There's also a paper that we wrote about design futurescaping that's part of this ebook reader thing that will be available from V2's website very soon. And I think that's probably going to be my last slide, if it isn't already, because it seems to have frozen here.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, and so now we're moving into our short talk show before we have a little break and then go on into our open think tank. We're not going to reveal our themes, by the way, for the open think tank until after the break, so just to keep you in suspense, just so you know. It's not that we don't have them, we've got them in our back pocket. But what I wanted to initially get you to address, I think, in this little talk show is you're all from different studios. The Near Future Laboratory, Superflux, really interesting group. How does collaboration figure into this? I mean, it seems like some of these things are really solitary, whimsical dreams, you know, like I'm thinking of the big red button that you created, Alex, that you didn't show, but, you know, basically well, anyway. It was in version 2.5.6. Anyway, but, you know, these kinds of things that sometimes there are acts of whimsy that are one-offs, that are, you know, designers often create these things as just singular creative acts. But then there's also working in a studio and working together towards a bigger vision. Can any of you pick that up and maybe address how studios work towards these kinds of bigger dreams?
I mean, just in terms of the big red button, for example. The big red button was an idea that Russell Davies, who's part of RIG, brought to me and my team when I was running Tinker, which is a design studio, until late 2010. And he wanted it as a one-off, but we decided to keep going and actually still make it and sell it for anybody who wants to spend that much money on a big red button. Because for us especially, and I can't talk for the rest of the speakers, but for me it's quite important to try to test out what it means to bring something to reality and to actually design something in the world and to put it out there and to see where demand lies. And we've sold 11 of them, I think, so far, because they're 120 pounds a pop, so they're
Just
not,
briefly
like,
describe
cheap.
what it is, because I know
It's a
what it is.
massive big red button that you punch
Really big, you
and,
know, like whack, like huge.
yeah, like big. It's an industrial foot switch that we've changed, and basically you press it, and it's the equivalent of doing space bar. on your keyboard. Like it just moves your cursor a little bit because you connect it to your laptop. And we thought it was hilarious, of course. Last month, David Copperfield bought one for his Las Vegas show. And I'm dying to know what he's done with it. He's probably not watching this particular live stream, but like, I would love to know what he's done with it, but we never thought
He's a magician. I mean, he doesn't need, like, he needs a wand, not a
yeah,
pen,
exactly.
right?
I don't know what he's using
Whatever.
it for. But if we hadn't tried to kind of make that happen, I think it would have just been in a bubble and existed in a bubble. And I guess that's less what I'm interested in.
Well, so I do work. Work. It's not really. It's a hobby, the Near Future Laboratory. But I do work at Nokia in an advanced design team, and I think there's a lot of the things that we do. I think are very much informed by this approach. So as a collaboration, I could say that in some sense, the Near Future Laboratory collaborates with Nokia because I'm there. But we do. For example, there was a bringing these kind of principles into sort of proper functioning design studio does happen in very interesting ways. So there was a clock that we made that was meant to be sort of design provocation that effectively its functionality was to test the trust between people. And so the way you did that was you had this alarm clock that you would set the time, but at the moment in which you actually set the time you wanted to wake up, you gave a device to a person who you trusted to wake you up, and that wake up might have been quite early in the morning or this kind of thing. And as soon as you gave this second part of the clock, the time and the clock went away. So you had to really trust the person who you were giving this to. And of course, this isn't the kind of thing that, it's almost like the big red button in the sense that it's meant to be a provocation and get people to think about something. It's not the kind of thing where you're expecting to sell zillions and zillions of them, but it does activate a sort of set of principles around, through this sort of design probe and provocation about making people think about who they would trust. And so I think doing that and sort of the question of collaboration comes in, I suppose, between, approaches to thing and the ways things that can, unexpected intersections between different ideas and how ideas work together. And I think in some sense we all are collaborating. I mean, we are, literally, in some senses.
We're getting the band back together.
You're getting the band back together.
Yeah, this was the phrase this afternoon, so we're getting the band back together. Anyway, it's a lovely phrase, isn't it? Don't you want to get the band back together? I think it's wonderful. Do you have any thoughts on this, Anab?
I think for us, collaboration is at the heart of our practice. We're only two full-time people, and we really value collaboration, whether it's with scientists or architects or sociologists. So for instance, working on this project with the Song of the Machine, some of the ideas Dr. Degenaar is going to make into a commercial company that he is creating. And the best thing about it is that we continue working with them to develop these products. So I think we are very interested in the space where they become real, but we are equally interested in being part of the initial conversation that will lead to the development of products. Also through our lab, we are developing another product at the moment, which is again a very collaborative, I think we are just really open to the idea of, like, if someone asks me, what do I do? Should I say I'm a designer? Like, increasingly people do more than one thing, and you can only just come together and make things happen is something we really believe in, so, yeah.
I guess that's a little bit leading me into another point, which is that the importance of film in all this and showing people. So if you're going to collaborate with people, if you're going to work interdisciplinarity and incorporate that into all areas of your practice, you have to show people what you're talking about. And this idea of the design film has become really huge, or at least it's become really huge to design fangirls like me. So there's all these videos available now on YouTube and Vimeo showing like the Immaterials video by Timo Arnold that showed like the shape of Wi-Fi and the shape of near-field communication and things like that. These design videos that really illustrate for people not just how a device works, but how things are all around us and in the atmosphere. Do you think that these kinds of films are they for lay people, or are they equally informative and interesting for designers like yourselves? do they play a role in educating your collaborators? Or is it really just, again, for people who like me who are non-designers, just think they're really cool?
I mean, there's a range of styles of using film in design. I think, so the work that oftentimes, Timo and the folks at Berg do are often very, very beautiful sort of didactic visualizations that help represent something that, in this case, is immaterial. There are other examples, I think, filmmakers they know how to tell stories, and so it's a natural medium to go to in terms of, the genre has been figured out. Like, we know there are people who go to school and they come out with a degree in basically how to write a spot-on 3-act romantic comedy, and they can do that for, blindfolded. And so I think there's some utility there in the conventions of film, the styling of film, the way of producing a film, the way people expect to see a film, that is exceptionally useful, because designers, the whole thing of designers are actually storytellers. I think oftentimes designers are not particularly good storytellers, and so learning how to do it and using existing tools and approaches and conventions is actually something that's quite useful. I found, just using film is a very direct way of communicating an idea, and oftentimes a lot easier than translating an idea into bullet points in a PowerPoint. So, for me, it's like no more PowerPoint. We communicate using film. It's a way not only of communicating, then it becomes a way of actually designing. So it's a way of trying an idea out, constructing a scenario or a story, and then actually being forced to produce a sort of visual representation of that story. It's actually quite hard. And in that, the hard part about it is that you're actually doing design work. So you're figuring out all the contested aspects of a design. It's not enough to just say, well, it'll just work. You have to figure out what kind of interaction would actually make it a compelling proposition, or how does this feature that we can't quite nail, how would it actually work in practice? And so you don't have to nail it when you make the film, but you're forced to address those things that you wouldn't otherwise expect. So it's a kind of prototyping, I find, and oftentimes one that can go alongside of all the other kinds of prototyping, either by making models or doing software prototypes or making functional hardware. So all those things, I think, go together in a really productive and useful way.
And also, just taking from that, it's like experience prototyping. So not only how the product will work, but also how people will live with it, use it, have it in their lives, form relationships with it. So it's also about the context that the stories building that narrative about how you live with something new.
I think it's also something that's not new, because especially architecture has always used film as part of practice to kind of tease out concepts that the final model couldn't quite illustrate. And the MoMA had an exhibition in 1974 that invited kind of top 13 Italian designers of the time to present a piece and a model, but also a film to go with it. And their stuff is surreal. I mean, it was also in 1974, but it's really amazing kind of storytelling that is almost an abstraction of what the concept is, rather than an explanation or didactic about, well, this is why I made this building, etc. And people like the Eames and the Power of 10 were also kind of quite key in being able to say part of a design practice also has to do with visual production and narrative and film production. That's also something we, in illustrating that closer to product design, I think, all the people we know and the wonderful work that Berg do, et cetera, is kind of really, really crystallizing that into making it about a thing, and making it about, the story is about the thing that you might not make, but it doesn't need to be made anymore, which is fantastic, I think.
Well, that's incredible, 1974 example. I mean, now it's trivial to make this stuff. There's no excuse almost, right? It's like Final Cut Pro, iMovie, whatever the hell, Windows Movie Maker. I made a movie yesterday on Windows Movie Maker, took me half an hour, whatever. There you go. 1974, this was like honkin' big stuff, like real film, whatever. So anyway.
Well, I don't want, not to like, but so it's, the tools are there, but it's still really very hard. Just as hard as telling a good story to make like a good compelling film. So it definitely becomes, it's like the thing, it's like, oh, now that I have a 3D plastic printer, like life will be great. And actually it's not. It becomes, you know, difficult in very interesting ways, which always move the practice forward and change the way you think about things. So the tools are there, and it's a wonderful medium, and you can create, you know, you can drop-down menu, create a weird effect, and it looks kind of cool, and you can geek out on that. But then just still trying to nail the way in which that medium is used as a thing to design with there's always a certain subtlety involved in it.
That's true. It shouldn't discount the difficulty of storytelling. It's just, but almost now becomes, I think, required in a sense. Or I think that's what I was trying to also hint at, is that the rise of the design film, if you will, is it's becoming now, there's no excuse not to make one, because there's people out there with the sort of montage skills and things like that. So if you have a compelling story in your product or your service, and you don't make a video, it's kind of, you know, you've kind of failed in a way, I suppose. And the last thing I want to pose to you, I suppose, before we break is, I really liked Alex's story about the sharing of the camera and this, you know, how we give permission to use objects or how we share things. And I wonder if maybe, I mean, you can continue to riff on the camera example if you want, Alex, but or maybe talk about something else, because I'm really interested in how.
My boyfriend's gonna kill me anyway. So.
Sorry?
My boyfriend's gonna kill me anyway.
Yeah, well, there you go. He's already gonna. Yeah, you're already gonna have some explaining to do. So, but yeah, I think objects that we share or unintentional sharing, unintentional uses, and sharing is one of the best ways, I think, to come up with unintentional uses that are actually quite innovative and then end up perhaps in other iterations of the product. Have any other things that you've worked on maybe had that happen, either as part of the process or like later on when it went out into the world?
I think it's something that kind of happens naturally when something becomes less precious, because it's kind of battered, it's, you know, it's old, it kind of works. I still have.
You called it cheap, the camera, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this cost me, the camera I had before that cost me about 400 pounds, and it was, you know, Canon, blah, blah, blah. And I picked this up in Jessop's, which is a crappy photo place in the UK, and it was 70 pounds. And, you know, kind of whatever, 8 gig, blah, blah, blah. And does facial recognition, blink recognition, and everything you want with it. I thought that was extraordinary, because I would, if I dropped this, I wouldn't feel particularly, you know, displeased or anything. And but I would, you know, I wouldn't mind kind of having it as like a communal object if this kind of, you know, sat there in the studio.
So are you telling us you only share your cheapest, crappiest stuff with your boyfriend? This is live on the internet.
No,
Just
or
teasing.
just this idea that when these start becoming ubiquitous and less personal, because I have my phone, I can take pictures on my phone, and it's my phone. I think these almost become quaint little objects that only do one thing, and that quaintness means that you're possibly less precious about the content. Whereas every time you sort of share your phone with someone, you always have to kind of, you know, go to the menu that will show the least amount of information or whatever, and like get out of whatever sub-menus you're into and go like, okay, yes, you have to hold it like this, etc. And it feels like you're just giving an arm away. And I think it's interesting, you know, what if you took generations of Nokia phones like the 3110 and
Like
did
this
something
one,
with
like this
it.
antique
Yeah,
right here.
exactly.
That everyone thinks I'm a terrorist when I pull it out of my bag, because you'd only use this to blow something up. You would never actually use this to make a phone call, but, you know, hey, my smartphone's in the shop, so.
Exactly.
And it works.
And there's tons of those.
And
There's tons and tons of those.
The world is
out
flooded
there.
with them. And I had a real laugh riot today, actually, reading my old text messages. It was quite a trip back in time. But anyway, yeah, sorry. Diversion. I
No.
love this thing.
It's good because it's like a treasure.
And
You,
it is
like,
a communal
discover
object. I share it
stuff.
with my boyfriend, who's sitting right over there.
Yeah.
So you see, like it's a communal object because it's this old battered. It's our beater phone. It's our communal beater phone that I have. Anyway, sorry. Did you guys have some other examples you want to share of this kind of?
I guess not sharing specifically, but I am interested in sharing and its sort of evolution as a social practice, especially in the networked age. And I think there's some stuff I feel like I'm going to give something away when it comes
Give
to
it away.
when it comes to the workshop. But I think something, yeah, so
Oh,
I'm very
yeah, we can't
interested
give
in
anything away about the upcoming
how people
activities.
would share if they weren't you know, if we didn't live in a world in which we assume everyone's connected potentially to everyone else, or could be eventually, because the network somehow makes that so much easier. And so I'm very interested in the evolution of sharing, especially as people perhaps react against the kind of ubiquitous of the all-consuming social network and maybe move towards this model that I think diaspora is trying to look at in terms of like small, less promiscuous social networks that or maybe spring up around particular ideas or evolve and develop.
Yeah, like the trust alarm clock that you talked about, I thought was a really excellent example of this. It's a shared thing. In a way, it's a one-way sharing. It's like you're sharing it with somebody, but one person gets the wake up, one person gets the benefit or whatever. But it's the ultimate kind of expression of, yeah, trust or...
And it's the reverse of like social media, where if you don't have immediately 100 friends on a thing,
Yeah.
then it's meaningless, and why would you ever want to use it? Which everything kind of online pushes to. It's like,
Yeah,
oh,
in
there's
this
no
case-
one here, you know.
Yeah, you only need one person that you trust to have the other piece to this device.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep. Great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have an incredibly short break, micro break. Think micro break. Grab a drink at the bar. If you must, it's really bad for you. Don't smoke. Please don't smoke. But if you must, you can go outside and have one. And then we're going to come back in 5-10 minutes. We're going to reveal the really exciting, and we've been slaving away over hot laptops all afternoon, coming up with the most exciting things we can think of for you guys to get together and work. We're going to be floating around and working with you on some speculative design scenarios. So come back as soon as possible. Thank you. So we promised that we were going to reveal to you now the design problems that we're going to be working on. I'm a woman of my word, so now I'm going to hand over the microphone to our guests, and they're going to explain. There's 3 problems or issues or challenges that we can face together, and we've devised these especially for you. You're free to pick whichever one you want to work on, because we thought this was better to give you a bit of choice. So I'm going to now hand the microphone over to Alex, who's going to describe one of the possible challenges to work on.
Okay. Challenge number 1, as it were, is to think about, this is speculative, so you can make it whatever you want. And you have to make it whatever you want. You have to, like, I think you get brownie points for being as original as possible. Or maybe, like, I'll buy you a drink. How's that? I'll buy a drink to the most original idea. Imagining the context of China and the Chinese market. There's a lot of people there with people who are having, on a personal level, more and more wealth. Imagine if they really got into robots. Like, just went berserk and went like, this is it. We need robots in our everyday life in order to feel like, you know, modern, etc. So imagine what that might mean. There, however, how many millions of people in China now? You know, countless. Someone pull up a Wikipedia page. 1.2 billion. 1.2 billion people. And they're all, yeah, a lot of them are getting old. And so, but also think like beyond the assisted, robot-assisted living for the elderly, which is kind of like known territory, and kind of think beyond that and think about transport and think about housing and think about relationships to each other and how the gender divide also kind of makes things quite interesting and things are moving automatically, robots. So think about that and try to pick, basically you will have flip charts and try to be as illustrative as possible. And per group of people who decide to work on this, so if you're interested in working on this, maybe you have to sit at one table, so maybe we'll pick this table. And you have to try to draw what those robots are, what those scenarios are, what those things are, because you have to elect one person in that group to then come back after and present it to everybody. And then I can decide whether I'll pay you a drink or not. So that's challenge number 1.
Challenge number 1. Maybe it's your challenge. So to sum it up, to sum up her lovely, Alex's lovely description, China, getting old, robots, need more robots. What do these robots do? What do they look like? We're tired of the healthcare robots. Don't give us those. Next challenge, Julian.
Okay, so this is a good challenge. Actually, this is my favorite challenge. So this challenge is something that I'm sure we can all imagine very easily. So the EU collapses. So the union is disbanded. It's going to happen, yes. It's going to happen in a couple of months. A consequence of that, there are a number of consequences. One consequence is that Deutsche Bank actually now owns Greece. And a lot of countries are upset about the role that Germany is playing in now the new Fortress Europa. And some of the consequences of that are that travel becomes much more difficult, because no longer do you have this sort of free-flowing borders, both for people and for goods and services. And there are a lot of very sort of nasty things that happen, particularly when Italians try to go to Germany. Some of them are turned away at the border in a not very polite way. And this kind of situation spreads to the point where effectively some people get trapped in countries and some people aren't able to go to countries. And one of the sort of side consequences of that is that professionals, people like doctors and lawyers and technologists, engineers, designers, machinists aren't able to go from one country to another. And this sort of breakdown of that kind of free flow of ideas and materials and goods and services leads to this very odd situation where technology standards, which are often formed when people get together in a room and decide how is this one USB technology going to operate with this other one, they're not able to meet. And so very quickly the internet becomes balkanized, technology becomes balkanized, so that you have devices that only operate in certain countries or certain parts of the world. And so the challenge here is in that world where effectively the internet stops working from country to country. So you can no longer, like revisions to TCP/IP protocol don't happen. So actually mail starts getting bounced from one place to another. So your challenge basically is to figure out in this world where the network doesn't work across borders, how would you actually get a message to a colleague from, let's say, the Netherlands to the UK?
So your mail starts bouncing. You start sending mail to your colleagues in Germany, and it's not going. That's no, I'm just kidding. And the Deutsche Bank owns Greece. I mean, this is crazy. Yeah. So devices that will help us bridge these kinds of the borders that were once erased have come back with a vengeance. Anab, what is your challenge?
Really simple, really local. So climate change is happening really fast. Sea levels rising much faster than the Dutch expected. The promised dikes are failing. They're going to collapse or break or whatever you might call it. Yes, it's a gloomy scenario, but very probable. And so yeah, there's one millionaire who's heard about this, who knows this is going to happen and has the money and the resources to hire the best Dutch designer, Marie van Was, I think that's her name, yes, to design a communication device for his family and himself in case they have to grab stuff and run so that they can stay in touch. That's it.
Right, guys, it's your worst nightmare. The dikes fail. You got 20 minutes. Get out of your houses. Let's go. The sirens are going. It's not the first Monday of the month. Come on, you got to run. And you have this communication device that is going to help you communicate with people, but how? Mobile phones don't work. Internet's not working. Nothing's working. Internet doesn't work anyway because of Julian's scenario. Can't count on the Chinese to help us. They're busy with their robots in the corner. What the heck how is this communication device going to work? What does it look like? You know, is it waterproof? What color is it? These are the kinds of things we need to think about. Okay, so those are the 3 challenges. You can pick one of them and work together on it. You have 30 minutes, roughly. Yeah, 1 per table. Don't work on all 3 of them. You have to pick one person at your table that is going to like come up and talk about the winner concept or the device that you think will solve this, this challenge. So choose that person wisely. You have half an hour, roughly. We'll be floating around and talking to you about the ideas that you're developing. You've got Post-it notes, pens, markers. We're going to give you some big paper. These are the tools of design. This is how it works, guys. You just get in there and start drawing things out and making criteria and thinking about. So you can approach it in a really structured way, like thinking about, okay, so what are the properties of this device? You know, physical, communication protocol, etc. Or you can be a little more free form in how you brainstorm. And if you have any questions or further, you need further details about the challenges, you can just approach any one of us. We'll be floating around and let us know. So, the clock is ticking. Make a flat.
Robots and vulcanized internet, and that one is
The dikes. Because we think we can consolidate, actually. Okay, so you guys, yeah, like all have to like now push together because yeah, we can actually make three groups, I think, instead of having tables work on different things. Got it? Got it. Okay, clock's ticking.
From business really about the highlighter with a belt. So I mean, you can have like on the other hand, there's also like flying kites for energy. So it could be some kind of like floating. But this is like something else. That it's not like when you get out of gravity, you can just have something pulled up. Also mentioned specific.
Yeah, that was otherwise that was so that was that's
something. Yeah, if the water comes in, you can use something runs can use it. But floating is maybe not enough. You know, it's an idea. I mean, floating.
So that they cannot agree upon standards by which technology and properties.
But anyway, in every movie, like if you think about Independence Day, different part, they always go to mountains because it's the rocky, high, some place, this water and stuff.
Let's say, or even within USB.
But there are no mountains in Netherlands.
Plus, it's if someone doesn't get the update, how do you you see this all the time. Even just like beating a guy out, so if you have, should be in an office, that's the idea. Like on foot, whether it's a drive,
There you go.
even the output of a bit of software, to file to that's probably when you have to start.
I mean, like the technology now is spiraling up to worldwide standards in organizations. Through the lack of communication, we spiral down into
maintain
different
effectively every country effectively has its own standards around them. If you think about railroads, you don't standardize, well, the train stops. That's it. No more going forward.
So we're going to have some different kind of internet.
Well, that's interesting. So that's, what would that be like? It might not be as bad as
You could travel around the very different cultures without going outside from your office. Because right now you get same internet all around the world.
Yeah, so that's right. So you can imagine a world in which some countries have an internet that is more reflective of the culture sensibility. I don't know what that means exactly, but you could, so in China it's very, very particular about the kind of media and content that you get.
It's like using a proxy on China to see the internet from the perspective of someone who is in China instead of restricting yourself, instead of opening up, or the other way around. Because Chinese people, they do proxy on our internet here, but doing the other way around. Because why? Why should we do that?
How do we do it before the World War II? Yeah, it's basically like going back in time. So how can you go back in time and still like global communication or like European? That has never died and is still here. Our radio frequencies, they cannot be bound between borders.
Actually, that's interesting. The institute I'm working on is they did a study on what happens when you have no electricity anymore. And one of the things that they said will be big is radios, because you can still operate them with batteries, and it's the easiest thing you can still maintain, and everyone has it at home. So that could be.
It's a thing that still happens. I mean, if there's specific weather, you can talk to a Russian. But only at a specific weather thing. So maybe we have to solve the weather problem instead of the connection problem.
So we have radio.
But we can use alternative technologies that are people powered and not state powered to solve the problem of the states. Like in the Arabic revolution.
Exactly, like
Sonic dog fights.
Oh, we should
totally think of illegal robot, like porn robot.
Well, they're already making all those sex dolls that are becoming more and more interactive with actual real skin feeling. They talk, they know basic sentences. They obviously are customizable for the needs of the person that wants to interact with someone that maybe someone wants to be bitched around and they will program to have the bitchy girlfriend, and then someone wants the one who says always yes and he gets the slave girlfriend.
So what are what do we envision when you imagine they are aging and the Chinese and they have this cute perspective of global reality? What kind of fantasy would they? I mean, you take that generic model and tailor it.
No, there is this thing that this phenomenon of single men in China, so the policy of the single child, and they always use push as a way to get down kids, so they have one shot and one boy. And these guys, since their marriages are based on status, these guys can work their ass off, but they don't have a own house or own car, so they get excluded by reproduction. So, and by affection, and they are very lonely. And this could be a really big story.
It's actually tactile, so it's less about sex, but it's more about feeling.
The robot that is there when you are home after
The hand-holding robot.
Robot friends as well. There's this whole, there are now services like social media type services for platonic dates. So if you're a traveler, you're a business traveler and you go to cities where you don't really know anybody, you could sign up for a date with someone local, but it's kind of it's specifically no sex, but it's I'm meeting a friend who's not quite a friend because I don't know them really, but we're gonna go and watch a movie and go to if you kind of pushed it there where they have very, very conservative family values, then it's companionship robots at home.
Yeah, companionships of all kinds. So you can choose what options. You want a friend, you want a lover for the night, long-term companion. You have the option.
You could just rent them in the streets, like the bike here at home. The OV.
That's great, like the car thing. Exactly.
And you have rentarobot.com with your robot friends because you don't have any friends to have a coffee.
Yeah, if you want to play a game where you need two people, then usually nobody else is interested in it.
Arcade
I think the most realistic feature for robots would be colonization of other planets for multiplayer games. For example, Mercury, which is not a hospitable environment. So imagine sending a bunch of robots there and having a war game where they can destroy one another remotely from the internet, just like the game Halo, only real.
Oh my God, you sell millions. TM to you. What's your name? Rob.
And I'm a not stupid American. Don't worry.
Hey, technically I'm American too. So.
No, that's amazing, because then, because aren't they the only ones, or one of the only ones who are still exploring kind of space, space investment? I think the Chinese have quite a lot of, they're kind of everybody else has gotten out of this game, let's do this, So.
At least publicly.
Sure.
I mean, NASA is just a media front anyway. You know?
Actually, that would give life to NASA, which is declining in funding anyway. So then the Chinese come in anyway, they're taking a whole lot. So they're like, hey, we've got a great plan as long as you do this. It's like,
Well, and this
we
is
can fund you further.
Yeah, here's some
Yeah. Because obviously it's not enough to just explore.
Because eventually we'll destroy this planet, so we might as well destroy another. And another.
You feel better.
Yeah.
It's all
So
about
at least
feel
use them
good.
first.
Yeah.
We can be
Okay.
Anything
So,
else?
what else?
I don't know, I'm thinking like about the topic of China, increasing population. So maybe more economical problems, and therefore like health issues are related to countries that have economic problems usually have problems with health issues. Anyway, that makes me think of some kind of maybe a robot that somehow helps you being alive, but how? What I imagine is that maybe you can buy organs and they keep them. Either like they walk with you around the city, and keep on. Maybe there's something, like a walking dialysis machine. So
And they can actually give you a shot of your medicine and kind of he is completely empathic with you. He senses every stage of
The
yours.
pain
So if you get a heart attack, it's diabetes or failure of one of the liver or something like really at-risk patients, or they could practice basic surgery on you to not have the hassle of going to the hospital, being in a waiting list, and probably dying during this process, which happens daily to a lot of people.
Like you see in those movies, when you always have like, I think it's called The Islands, or it's one of those where you have the guy who's cloned, which is just an organ bank for somebody else.
Movie.
But imagine, like you said, you cannot clone a whole person, but you can clone an organ, but you still need the rest of something to keep that organ alive. So maybe a robot that keeps, it's just there to keep the liver functioning.
But he will
I don't know.
not die like the people in the island.
Yeah, that's also the thing. It's more human in a way that you don't kill you just kill the robot. Plug it off.
But also one of the trends was talked about, like everything is getting smaller and faster, so probably robots could also be integrated in yourself to keep you alive, for example. Like a pacemaker, for example, could be much more extended, like with this organ, preventing you from accidents.
Nanotechnology.
So, yeah, imagine nanotechnology that could attach itself to the neurons in the brain and basically facilitate some form of experience that's different than what you are perceiving with your senses. I think that would be a logical future for the internet. Basically, you'd have Google embedded in your mind.
Well, technically that Google's not really around, so it wouldn't be Google.
Yeah.
It's with the Chinese Google.
Well, that's Google's mistake.
Actually, it would be cool if robots were an experience for you, because maybe they find it too much of an effort. They want to have a life, but they've reached a stage that they don't have the energy for a life. So they want someone to live their life for them, and they feel that sensory experience. So maybe be able to disassociate the physical experience from the actual satisfaction of the sensory experience. Maybe robots going out there.
Can you imagine robots? I really like the idea of the nanotechnology, because you can actually, with a shot, put a tiny robot or more than one tiny robot in your blood, in your body. They could become an ultimate source of augmented reality experience. So you're in front of a computer and you, for example, have sex and you're actually experiencing the real thing because you have a robot.
It's like demolition.
A ranking system to the real disaster, that if you help more people, you get more points. So people will really help each other out.
Maybe, for example, if I'm in a disaster, I think I would want to die first. I don't want to just wait till
Really?
Wait till you're there.
What if after maybe
But isn't our presumption that we will all die? That's what we're assuming.
Okay, let's say that it's like you don't
we all are
suicide.
fighting to survive. That's the assumption.
Well, even if you think you
but
physically you die.
Yeah, but physically you die.
That's what they're saying, that we
You
will
wanna
die.
postpone
We
it
will
first.
survive. Fight to survive.
Yeah, but you just export your consciousness. Anyway, you're gonna die, so you export your brain to some. It's like a suicide.
I'm serious. I'm this millionaire and I have this money and you are the designer to get the money.
What is coming
You need to give me some
Okay, but then I just can export my brain to a safe connection area. So let's say that
So you have like a backup body on the other side of the world.
body that is in some way safe, where you can
Would
just
it be rather
suicide.
save the people than make them hopeful and then that they die at the
Why
end?
don't we all just take a vote?
But you guys, get your survival hats on. You're gonna live. You're not gonna die.
You want to kill everybody.
Maybe it's gonna be
dramatic.
Yes. Sorry, I'm too negative. I just mean.
No, 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 it's good. It's good. Well,
Try to avoid it at least.
we're gonna avoid it. I mean, there's an assumption that it's going to be terrible. As a human sort of natural instinct, we're going to fight to survive, right?
Yeah, okay, but on the other hand, you cannot squeeze people. I mean, we're going to be anyway a lot.
Yeah,
so.
but this is one millionaire and his family, and he's paying you money to design for him. So what are you going to give him?
It can die, I mean.
It was on the,
Must
yeah,
have been
I
on the first page.
But I think like the most important things that we are saying now is just to like provide yourself some food and stuff, and then connection with the floor.
Those are basic.
That is the only thing that you want.
Another one is maybe location, that you know where to go or where other people might be.
Maybe if we were all magnetic, we would actually attract hell. So you wear some magnetic
The people you don't like.
Yeah, there's some sort of signal system called internal signal system that works on long distance. Would be very good in
We should use salmons. I think salmons they can travel like yeah. No?
Yeah, but what if there's...
Is it not true?
There's many animals who follow routes of course, and lead you to choose for them.
Yeah. Not only
like
salmons.
birds
What if we had an internal one? Internal signal system. Which will attract if you are in a safe place and then you send out a safe signal which will attract other people. So everybody will, when there's a tsunami, everybody will go to their highest point.
Yeah, but with a disaster, I don't think you automatically know which is the safe place and which is not.
No, but if you are in a safe place and then there's a hormone in your body which activates
Because I was actually from the MRI once in experimenting with different animals as well.
But I mean, in a way, it's like some stuff that animals do and we don't know anymore. So it's about how can we get, it's just like
instinct kind of.
Yeah.
But animals have calls and everything, so they could have some sort of communication, and it doesn't have to be physical calls, but some way they know where to go and the safe ones.
Yeah, we
Signal
don't,
or,
we should invent this.
yeah. But do we combine it with the pets? Why not? Could be some sort of pet like.
Come on, if there's a big wave, it is.
Yeah, and then when you're really hungry, I think you would choose the pet than the way. Otherwise you die.
But no, but let's say you have a lot of pets and you can eat them. You can eat them while they're bringing you.
I don't think you can choose in that.
If you choose to eat it rather than let it save you, then it's still your choice.
But it's like when you know like this in Braveheart when he's opening a cow in order to survive the night. You know, like when
Yeah, but I think you would do that.
No,
I would definitely.
Yeah, but I mean let's say like you have some kind of animal that enables you to do something even though you're gonna sacrifice him.
Okay.
So that's something. So as we're in Holland, we need a flying inflatable cow that brings you somewhere. Say, gives you shelter.
So I think what you guys need to do now is you need to come up with the one idea. So you should perhaps vote from all the ideas you have.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just speak out all the ideas that you have so far. There is the idea of a compass in the body, embedded in the body that will take you around so you know how to navigate because that's important. There was the idea of the inflatable pet that you could ride on and also eat if you had to, and it also had a compass to give you directions. There's the idea of the magnetic suit. Humans become magnetic and also the person. Then there's the idea of the game that actually there's some sort of a virtual headset that you just wear this game and you think you are all still enjoying everything. What else is there?
But the compass would definitely
export my brain.
your like boss thing or something.
export my brain.
The compass thing should also have this pause thing or something that you know that somebody is in a good state.
Yeah, exactly. It's only related to others.
But it's not only the location, but also maybe something that is going off to let you know, like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So all these, any other ideas that I've missed?
What about the first one?
Hologram mountain.
Yeah, like the fake safe place. Yeah. They're just giving you a way to survive.
Yeah, and the death grill.
So that's another one.
And this will bring people together.
So the chance of survival.
So it's like
that's that one.
Yeah, then they a holy object that's gonna save you somehow and it's gonna give you direction.
It's not real, but it will save you.
So, okay, so you've got, choose the one that you feel like to laugh. Yeah, you just want to be provocative and funny.
I think the hologram thing is
So you can talk about what to do next and you can eat each other. Sorry, but you have to.
No, but maybe you find that the more you are, the more maybe you find solutions.
Like really like carrying.
So, but I mean, how is gonna save you?
But it still helps.
But how is gonna save you in the moment? I mean, you have 2 minutes, and you know that you have to go that
The other one is like really
is this gonna
technologies, I think, or
like existing infrastructure?
Yeah. I would say this is Mad Max.
Which one was that?
This is
Mad Max?
Neutron.
The Neutron.
That's
really
really like.
No, this thought this was low tech. What is low tech?
Low tech's the slow, right? Wasn't it the slow, like
So I think we should, I don't know what we should, so I guess we should build up some kind of story. I like actually the anarchy idea for a start, to have some, to start with a dystopian dark picture of the future, so that the first moment when people realize, oh god, Facebook doesn't work, whatever, they're just going to
Yeah, that makes sense. But then uncontrolled new standards will arise, and people will invent new standards across borders and nationalities, because it's practical.
Exactly, and this could be made by these hacker groups, that's actually not so, and using all technology.
And it's so,
existing infrastructure.
yeah, so it's like government bypass.
Anarchic standards.
Yeah.
Anarchic standards.
Yeah.
Anyone can create their own.
Yeah, we're creating a new independence of states and
that technology somehow becomes more coarse, so it's more, it's more obvious about how they interpret or how to get the things. So it's actually reverting back, pre.
Yeah, one of the first things he said was like that, going back to pigeons.
Yeah. You can always play a final record if you roughly know how the technology was created.
Like the cow Wi-Fi.
The MoveFi.
Yeah, MoveFi. You can have pigeons
Pigeons carry that is isolated group because this happens now everywhere new ideas open up.
I think there's a challenge because one country decides on a certain kind of communication, the other country does, but they don't connect.
No, but sometimes they will by incident, so you will have interesting new networks, like we actually said.
It's because why are the borders up again? Because of the nationalities, the countries. They're governments, the people. What do they want to communicate, travel, be peace. Growth of the technology open source.
They create a world where there are no borders.
Yes.
Actually, this DIY approach is very realistic because I have a friend that lived in a Czech dorm, student dorm, and they just have one internet connection. So what people did, they were buying themselves hubs and connecting themselves, having cables outside of the windows, and they just did it. If the state doesn't do it, let's do it ourselves.
Yeah, the same with the video tapes in the student dorms, the whole flat. Downstairs there was one video VCR. Somebody rent one video, put it in, but all the TVs in the flat displayed the same. It worked.
if we only have transgenic seeds, and the only way to transport these transgenic seeds would be through engines. You give them to seeds, and then they can travel and get untraced by these borders. I'm trying to think of new scenarios.
Holes that are already in the air.
And we could use their sheet as something that will be filled out into the system.
Guano.
Yeah, guano, yeah. Which is actually a very nice, good fertilizer. Fertilizer for
I guess you need a super company to make that.
If we can have conductive fertilizer.
2 even? Yeah.
Somewhere between 2 and 5 minutes. So how many things do we have? That's good.
We have like 4 global ideas. Maybe you should
So
like
we can-
really work out one scenario in a way that
Okay.
into a
Well,
network
okay,
or
so
something.
the option is to go broad, we could do all of those, we can decide a little story, or we can go deep in one. It's up to you.
You can go do it your own way with a lot of options.
Because we could rationalize the broad by just saying that, look, no one's going to make one decision.
Exactly.
Because there's no standards, so there'd be a
That's
lot of
one.
different
Scenario is like the organizing causes chaos and anarchy. From that new connections will develop. New technology will be reused.
Everything will be regionalized. So every development will be like
I have a suggestion to visualize that here. Because when we talk about integrating countries, you talk about connections between one point to another, like that. And you build a network which has some centralized points. But I suggest that we draw some kind of very anarchic lines here, but mostly that concentrates inside their own country already, like some kind of textile, which is still not...
It should be very fixed borders, but with hope, because we have these clear borders, but then the people are finding their way through. As again, the Germans can play a role because they always found a route to get over the border.
I'll draw something here to see if it's kind of thing like that. How you communicate with these networks. This is the space where the digital coins and the stuff happens.
Right, so there's so suppose Spain, France, completely divided, and there's like a lot of stuff going on within Spain, and sometimes there's like
some kind of bridge, but they are temporary. That's very important. They are temporary. Something that it's not official and it's not established. It's ad hoc. It happens for some specific situation.
it's a one-time income.
Yeah, I think if you can start with different colors and different type of.
Wait, somebody just like does everything.
Yeah, okay. So
Why is everything just like?
Uses the friction with the air to generate energy. So there's an electrical, there's a cable that goes
Okay, everyone. So you've got at least half an hour to go over these issues, these challenges. We've given you our finest post-it notes, our best markers, and some lovely large sheets of paper. Oh, they're still debating over here about the about the dikes breaking. Who's ready to present? Who wants to volunteer? They're not ready over there. They're not ready. But I can see that the Internet Balkanization group might be ready. No? You're ready. Julian's going to present it. Oh, jeez. You know the answer. You doing all the drawing, you're going to present. Come on, come with me. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, come on. Yay! Okay, so let's get up on stage. Oh, I need the stairs. No, I don't need the stairs. Okay. So, what's your name?
Frederick.
Okay, Frederick. This is the people responding to the challenge about the end of the Eurozone. Greece is owned by the Deutsche Bank, and the internet is now totally balkanized. You can't send an email to your colleagues in Germany. It bounces back. They use a totally different protocol. Frederick, what's the solution?
There is no solution because there's no problem. There's a whole new range of opportunities for starting your own company. And actually, we thought about mad scenarios like turning countries into companies and companies into countries. So you can start a company that's actually a country, and then you can sell parts of your company for people to use as their own country. So, and you can run your own internet standard if you will. And if you want to download new standards, you can download new standards and you can change them because they are all customized, so you build your own internet. But because of these kind of different standards, there will be even more opportunities. People that try to bridge the gaps between these different standards, we call them some kind of digital coyotes. Some kind of hackers that understand different standards, and they ask you for low rates for translating your data across these borders. And we also thought about some kind of low-tech techniques for transferring data, like pigeons and Mad Max scenarios. Slow internet. Yeah, this is a very important policy for companies and countries that wants to, get feed into this economy. So you only get 2 emails per day, and during all the day you have some real work being done. What else more here? Oh, so we thought about some high-tech, not so much about high-tech technology like using neutrons to communicate across future and past, but no one knows how to really communicate to them because they never stop to talk with you. And yeah, I think that's it.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you, Frederick. I'll take this away from you. Oh, I'll take this away from you because we'll save this for posterity. I'll give it to Wilco. He'll save it for the archive. Wow, business opportunities. Yikes, that's really makes me feel icky. I want to take a shower. Anyway, the robot people, do you have something shiny and delightful and yes, yay, come up, yay. Oh wow, it's really getting hammered into the V2 infrastructure. I don't know about your slow internet idea, because I know for sure 2 emails a day, and I think, well, anyway, it's pretty crazy. I would suffer withdrawal. Anyway, what's your name?
Sandro.
Sandro, nice to meet you. All right, tell us all about the robots that are going to take over
China. Sorry for those sketches, and not so great. But anyway, we came up with different kind of robots, and we started thinking about possible issues from that might happen in China in the future: overpopulation, well-being. Oh, thank you. Increase of well-being. And long story short, if for every more or less category we had different solution. And for example, we were thinking about leisure time. We were thinking that maybe in the possible near future, it will be easier to have robot fighting than instead of doing more than people. So why not sending them far away in the space, some kind of like a multiplayer thing, so you can send them in space and maybe even play from Earth and had them fight, and just when they're dead, just leave them there. So some kind of far away multiplayer game. Robomate. Robomate is like, we were thinking about the possible idea of, for example, in China you have the, correct me if I'm wrong, about the fact that, for example, you have only 1 child per family. So therefore, I mean, finding a wife and also not that easy because the number of girls are now decreasing and so on. So yeah, this is happening. I mean, this is going to happen in a few years probably. You need a maid, or even so. I mean, maybe I don't know. Even if it's not a girl, you know, you become a guy who only works for her, and then you don't have time to finding friends. So why not having a friend that you can just rent for a night and have a beer with them, maybe, so robo-mate. The third one is the creepiest one we came up with, which is a robot that we're thinking again about possible problem in China. Could be, I don't know, overpopulation, so I don't know, lack of work. So it's very expensive to go to the doctor and so on. So why not having a robot that will somehow either help you, I don't know, for example, breathing. It's a walking machine that helps you breathe if you have a breathing problem, or even for people who can afford it, it's possible to clone organs, and but you need to keep that organ alive, so you just put it into a robot that maybe walks with you and keeps your lungs safe in case of emergency. You just take the plug off, take the lungs, and place it in a person's body. Creepy, I told you. The third one was thinking about, again, people get richer, and and so some kind of jobs are not as promising for most people. So what happens is that you have robots taking jobs, low class kind of jobs, so waitressing and so on. And so this is kind of robot we could have some. That's all.
Wow, I still need a shower. Come on, guys, cheer me up. The last group. So we're, robot maids. I don't know. I'm feeling like, robot lungs. Woo, heavy stuff, heavy. But the dikes broke. I'm also depressed about that. So what's happening? So we have a communication device that's gonna fix everything. What's your name?
I'm Simone. Hi, everyone. So we've been struggling with this amazing thing that's gonna happen in Holland anyway. And yeah, it's okay. I'm from Italy, so I'm gonna escape. But so we were thinking about it. In Holland, we have a lot of cows, and actually that's why we said maybe why don't inflate one and escape in the sky. And as probably upwards is the only way safe, we actually translated this into something else. And we thought that birds are something quite interesting to fish, because we can actually fish bird with a fish in itself, and so throw an inflatable fish in the sky and just get birds transport us out in somewhere safe. So by actually having an inflatable fish, we can go upwards, so get safe from water, and somehow we're gonna create a bait for very intelligent gooses that are gonna bring us to another very intelligent gooses that are gonna be food for us. So by riding our nice fish, we can hunt for other goose, and so get some food, and we're gonna get probably somewhere safe. If not, we're gonna have some fun. And on the other hand, we can use wind energy and friction of the air to create energy, and so power our amazing laser gun to kill other goose and get food. And yeah, so this is our holy cowfish.
Holy cowfish.
Yes.
Thanks. Wow. Well, I don't know. That was the weirdest thing I've heard all day. That's for sure. So here we are. Well, we've got our scenarios. I don't know. How do people feel? Do we want to have a little chat about it together? Does anyone have any questions they want to ask to the designers, our guests, or are you guys feeling all talked out and it's time to wrap it up? Great diagrams, by the way. Really love them. Beautiful, beautiful. I think it's time maybe to break it up, and we can continue to have some more drinks at the bar. You can buy some books. You can chat to each other, discuss the holy cow fish, the business opportunities of the balkanized internet. Guys, I don't know. I'm really a little maybe freaked out by that, actually, to be honest. And the robot lungs. Wow. Yeah, anyway. So thank you for coming. Thank you for your creativity. Thank you for participating in this, our third series of Blow Up. Have a great night. See you at the bar.